when you're 100 people, you're in such a strong position to deliver better quality. And yet actually, in some ways, it may appear less good.
So I remember when we first started Cogent back in 2004, and there was like you and me and maybe Sam, is it Redhead?
Sam Redhead,
yeah. And Luke was in Thailand. And what we used to do, the way we used to decide what we needed to do was that we would go to the pub after work. So we would be working during the day, and then we'd go to the pub and we'd sit in the pub, and we'd literally put the world to rights. And it was really good because we sorted all the problems out with the different. We were managing a remote team effectively. We had freelance designers who were often working from home. We had Luke and his team out in Bangkok. And obviously then we were managing customers as well, clients as well. And the way we would kind of get an overview of what each of us was doing and what each of the different teams were doing, in inverted commas, was just by chatting about it over the pub. And that worked, I guess.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And, you kind of, I guess from you, felt the same as me, that I knew everything that was going on. I felt comfortable that we were on the same page in terms of our what we thought was the right decisions to make, if there were decisions to make. And that probably carried on through into the agency as we got bigger, because we still had the remote aspect of Luke and his team being out in Bangkok, but everyone was in the same office. It was small enough you could overhear conversations going on. So fast forward now to sort of 100 people in ScreenCloud in Bangkok, London, Belfast, and Los Angeles, and some remote people as well. Teams getting bigger. There's so much going on. I guess what we're finding, one of the things that we're finding is it's become a lot harder for everybody to know what everyone else is doing, and importantly for those teams to be able to collaborate in the way that you could when we were smaller, those things that we took for granted.
Yeah, well, I would agree with everything you said there, apart from a little bit towards the end, if I understood it correctly. Because I think what happened is that in the first kind of wave of people that joined and worked on ScreenCloud, you've got a lot of generalists. We didn't have specific teams because the team would either be one person, it would be silly, and also there was just too many things to do. So you all kind of pile in and help each other. And so just by osmosis and by the fact that you may have even played a hand in it, you are kind of aware, very aware, and contributing to almost everything to a degree. Then, you grow up a bit more, and that starts to get rather chaotic, where people don't know, what they're supposed to do and this and that, and they're all being pulled around in different directions. So you course correct, and you course correct by introducing things like OKRs, departments, less of a flat org structure, more hierarchical. Introduce management teams, start to bring in experienced managers and leaders, and you create teams, you create silos. And that team, might have an OKR, might have a kind of, OKRs supporting it. Key results that they're measured on as a team. They recruit more people within their own team. They're kind of fairly self-contained.
And they kind of have that kind of cultural thing as well that they build up in that team.
Absolutely, yeah. Each team has a slightly different personality. There's sort of some universal-ish kind of elements to the culture, but absolutely, the work that they do and the type of people that work on those sort of things is going to be different based on the team, and also, just the nature of that dynamic between that team, and also what country they're in, things like that. So suddenly they're all doing that, and to a degree, on a piece of paper, that looks great. Looks really well organized, really well structured. Assuming it's all going well, you kind of go, yeah, I can kind of get this. I see the team thing. I can see career progression here. I can see where we're going to need to add roles in the future. And from if you're planning the war from the war room, that looks fairly well structured. And then I think the problem is then when you're back out in the trenches, you start to see things which I've kind of more recently become a bit more troubled by, which is they're not talking to each other, or they're not talking to each other very much. And suddenly you have things where, something gets shipped and and it just doesn't get picked up elsewhere. And then what previously, if we'd shipped something, it would have been pushed out on a salesperson would have mentioned it on the phone to their next customer. Marketing would have picked up and pushed it out in the newsletter and put it on, up on the site. Might even tell their investors about it. We would have educated on how we got there, what the challenges were, what the best way to. It would have just filtered through. And now I see it and it doesn't. And I think, well, this is really scary because I've got this great thing that this innovate is either a great new piece of information, piece of data, feature, whatever you might want to be, and others are just completely unaware of it, and therefore it's not going to find its full potential. And it could be a great piece of content, great piece of video, a wonderful podcast such as this. It doesn't feature through, but then you can't tell everyone everything. So.
Because you don't want to be
that.
You don't want to be the ringmaster saying.
I am right now the ringmaster of several teams. I'm literally bouncing around different Slack channels, kind of ringing different bells, right, they're doing that, you're doing that. Who's writing the copy for that? Okay, is that ready to go? Okay, now sort out that. Right, where's the automation? Has that gone live yet? Okay, and
yeah, that's not great.
And I'm like, I mean, partially I don't mind it a little bit, but partially it really worries me because I think if I'm not doing it, then it's definitely not going to happen organically. And also, it's actually quite hard for me to do it. Even when I'm doing it, it's kind of hard to get people to really see what I'm trying to do. And then you take a bigger step back and you go, at the end of all of this is the customer. And the customer is going to experience elements from almost every single team is going to sort of at some point touch the customer. How smooth, consistent. I mean, is support going to say, "Oh, it doesn't work like that," because they haven't actually seen that bit's been redesigned? Are they going to, you see what I mean? Just even changing the color of it. Oh, it's the green button. Oh, now it's blue. Like what? Like all of that it chips away at your confidence in a company. Now, ironically, when you're 100 people, you're in such a strong position to deliver better quality. And yet, actually, in some ways, it may appear less good and much more kind of, I don't know, bitty.
It's interesting. Do you remember, I think when we went to the first 0.9, was it Skyscanner? I don't know if you saw that, but there was a talk and they were talking about this concept of these smaller teams. I'm not saying that we should do this necessarily, but it is quite interesting. So rather than having a whole marketing department and a whole product department.
Oh yeah, like cross-functional teams.
Yeah, so you just have like one marketing person who they would just work on a particular bit.
I actually think this is how I think people like Google and stuff do this, where I think they get so big that you can't have the hierarchical structure.
Yeah.
So they kind of go back into these sort of small cells, kind of you. It's almost like you picking players like the football team at school. You go, I want them at right back.
Yeah.
And you kind of put them all together. And go off and work on something and then maybe disband the team afterwards and go and do it again or something. I think that's how a lot of the big tech companies do it. I'm not completely familiar. Obviously, we've just recently had to add a degree of rigidity to our non-rigid system that we previously had. And it kind of makes me wonder, I think it's just like overcompensation towards another way where suddenly it gets all about your structure, your hierarchy, or we're on this product cycle, what we've done to deliver. All right, we've done that. Yes, we've achieved it. OKR, boom, 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 boom. Do my one-to-one and my objectives. Oh, wow, we're rocking, we're cooking. But you're actually not. You're so insular now. You're delivering against a team, not against a company, and not against a customer.
Yeah, and I think the other challenge as well is that because it's changing so quickly. I mean, when you were talking about that, I was thinking back to my previous lives and big companies that I work for. So I work for Pearson, for example, and what did we do when a new book was published? But it was and all the teams worked together. You'd have the people that were to do the publishers, the guys the editors, those sort of thing, those people working with the people that were actually pulling the copy together, if you like, and making sure that it was subbed properly. The printers, the designers, the marketing, the sales, there was a work together. But the reason it worked, I think, is because it was pretty much rinse, repeat for everything.
Yeah. And it's not to say we don't have process. Like, I mean, because obviously our team will actually listen to this about, what? That's totally not true. Like, marketing totally collaborates with it. And I think broadly speaking, they do on the big stuff, but not not on that sort of smaller, more subtle things. But also, I imagine that once we've got through this several times, it will smooth out.
It might get
things
easier.
like that.
Yeah,
it will.
I mean, in the past, I suppose we've had one product, and we still kind of have one product, but there are lots of sort of features within that product and different versions of the product now that you'll be able to have. You might be able to have an enterprise version with various enterprise features, or and not an enterprise version.
You see a lot of fake news around this, like do we support that dashboard or that dashboard? Well, that one went wrong. It was something that was on the roadmap, was then sold to a customer that it was actually live. Then suddenly the product team had to rush out at getting it done, but it wasn't quite done, fully featured. And so you're sort of in that, no, that's just a communication thing. But it wasn't a hideous mistake. It was understandable because it probably was one of the next ones we were going to do. But, I mean, maybe I might be being harsh. We might actually be good at this. It might just be genuinely bloody hard. But, when you start to see this sort of, because things that were one way in the past, they kind of have a way of becoming like the truth forevermore. But when you're constantly evolving and changing sort of product and design, and to a degree evolving who you really serve, you even hear it in interviews. Actually, that's where you hear it a lot. Like, so if you do an interview, but let's say I don't do all the first round interviews now, you're hearing someone describes what we do, and you realize actually sometimes they describe what we did. That was true for like several years and still sort of is true, but isn't but you're interviewing someone for the future and maybe to come in about part of that future. And actually you're telling them what we used to do, which was like just them in kind of complete muscle memory repeat mode of that was our pitch. True. 2017, 2018, you were bang on. 2020, not so much.
Yeah. And I guess if you're not that close to the product, so I'm just thinking about someone like your head of people, for example, anyone in that team. It's kind of quite hard for them to be totally on top of the product if it's
of course.
But yet they will be selling the company to prospective employees. It's a real challenge, actually.
And it comes back to this thing you always hear, which is leaders just have to simplify their story down to a few things that they always say. And I know why now. It's just because it takes so much repetition for that to burst through the wall, and also for all the new people who haven't heard it so much before. And also, I suppose if it's a smaller number of things that your kind of key principles, your key ideas you're pushing forward, if they do mature and evolve, that it's easier for that to be picked up on if there's only a handful of them. But if your list is sort of, here's the 20 things we do, and then you sort of subtly evolve all 20, that's not going to come through. But if that really repetitive story suddenly then starts to just edge towards a slight different direction, it's going to be picked up a lot easier by people. But then it got me thinking, like, so who is ultimately responsible for this cross-fertilization? Is that the right way of putting it? I don't know. Between all of these teams to make it happen. All right, at the moment, it's us. I suppose you've got to look to the leaders of those teams as well. And that's probably, something we've just recently, again, more formally put in is this management team underneath the leadership team. And to a degree, we're still trying to figure out exactly what the job of that team is. I'm wondering if this is not one of the rather big things that is there to do. Yeah. Because if it's just each team lead turns up and gives you an update as to how their team's doing, that is literally the problem manifested.
Yeah, because it's just like, here's my silo version of the
here's
world.
My 5 minutes. Yeah, here's my 5 minutes showing off to my other managers. All right. Great.
Isn't it funny? We were talking in the last podcast about sort of having to reinvent yourself almost as you get to a certain, or unlearning things that you did before. And actually, when we were 20 people, this would have felt foreign. It would have felt like, I just don't get it.
You would have had bigger problems. If 20 people can't talk to each other, then you're really in trouble.
But now you're in it and you're seeing it. And it happens all the time. Like it happened, you suddenly get this kind of thing of like, oh my God, actually, yeah, this hasn't been communicated, and I'm not sure these guys actually know about this, or if they know about it. And then there's confusion. So you sort of say, what are we doing about X? And they'll go, well, I spoke to so and so in this department, and they said it's not ready. But then someone else in another department said it was ready, so we're a bit confused. So we've done nothing, kind of thing. And it's that there's like, wow, how do you kind of police that? How do you? Is it a question, as you say, of just saying to the departmental heads, right? You need to make sure that you are aware of what's going on, and it's your responsibility to. Or is there some kind of, I don't know, some traffic manager or someone who's sort of saying, right, this is what happens to happen at certain points at the time.
I suppose it's also about how you define completion, because you could say theoretically that no feature, for example, or no piece of content counts at all, regardless of how much effort's been put into it, until it is out in the wild. So that presentation, you could have written 99% until delivered. Like the sort of the impact of 1% done and 99% done to the external world is zero. Because
to the company, it's like the worst possible.
But if you've 99% done something, especially if you're not the person actually standing up and delivering the presentation, you would kind of consider that done. You'd be like, done
my bit,
and fair enough, because you probably got other bits on the list too, right? So it's not like, but then if you've done your bit, what point is that? Does it never come back to bite? That maybe it went down a black hole and never was picked up again? I mean, are you devolved a responsibility because you've done your bit?
Yeah.
To a degree, I would argue, yes, you are, but you're not completely. And I find that it's down, and this is because I still don't know quite how to organize this. I find it's down to personality, the ones that come back and revisit and the ones that don't.
I think it comes back again to this specialist versus generalist thing. So when it's your company, you kind of care about every aspect of it. You care about what the customer thinks. You care about what, but if you're saying, well, my job is design, or my job is production, or my job is marketing, or whatever, and this isn't a criticism in any way.
Everyone tells you, that the best people perform if they have a clearly defined role, and I think that's effectively what you're about to say. So.
Well, it's kind of that thing of like, I think there was something that happened the other day, and it was like, well, this happened, and then we stopped it because someone in another department said it wasn't working, and I'm not really sure what's happened to it. But it's quite difficult to say, well, who should have ownership? Who should be really, really bothered about the fact that we did this thing, it kind of worked for a bit, and then it didn't work, and now it's kind of been forgotten, but it's a really important thing for the customer.
Yeah. I mean, like, it was like the thing that kind of came up today. So we're about to republish, recycle, I don't know what the right word is, redo our OKRs for the next 4 months, which is our length of time. And we've decided on our company level ones, which is good. And now we are then doing the departmental ones.
Yeah.
And what I did 2 calls this morning with 2 of my teams that report into me. And what came out of it was that we want more cross-team collaboration on the same OKR. Now, even the system sort of doesn't really allow for that easily, or I think you had a way of doing it, but it's maybe a bit technical for the podcast. But it sort of pushes you into the marketing team will do this for the OKR. The back-end product team will do this for the OKR. The app team will do this for the OKR. The sales team will do this. And it's like, hey, that sounds great. God, the collective of all of that work put together feels phenomenal. But in the same way that if you're going to make a fantastic album, you don't just randomly chuck 12 songs on. You create a flow, right? Like the songs are unique pieces of work. But if it's going to really hang together, the order of them, the way it's mixed, the whole thing, right? That's the craft.
Yeah.
So I guess that's in music world, that's producers. Who's the business version of that?
Yeah.
Operations? I don't know. Like the founders?
The product manager?
I feel like I'm massively missing something obvious here.
Yeah, someone will be listening at this and screaming at
going,
me.
You fools!
Yeah. It's obvious. Google it.
But, we've just gone from one extreme to the other of everyone knowing a bit too much about everything and not having enough focus to lots of focus, and then suddenly losing that sort of magic thread that made it all feel so collectively right. And then you just see, oh no, that support article doesn't make sense anymore because that, and like, wow, how do you... And how can you track everything like that? How does that work?
I mean, the other way is have loads of processes and checklists, and okay, before we do a feature, it has.
How would you get anything done?
I know, it's just like, it doesn't. You kind of move away from the creative aspects of it and the sort of, I guess, the innovation that comes around.
So my devil's advocate answer when I was really kind of struggling with this, which is really over the last couple of days, was like, maybe it just comes out in the wash. I did see someone say, trust in teams. Teams will always eventually get there. If you trust the team, if you basically trust the team, the people who are in it, trust the team to get there. It just might take them a while. But then how long have you got? I mean, you've got to keep on growing fast. You've got to keep on beating those targets. That's quite challenging. You're going to trust the team to eventually sort of figure it all out. I mean, it will do, because a customer complains, that support article doesn't make sense, or that link's dead, but it doesn't leave a great impression, does it? And it used to be so tight. That's what's the galling part, is it was so tight at the beginning because you're always sort of in, but it wasn't better then. Clearly, like, what can be achieved by a handful of people is limited, but that was not the problem.
Yeah, it was joined up, I suppose.
It was joined up, probably because you actually wrote everything, so even the language. And I don't know. This is sort of almost turned into a bit of a moan. It's not meant to be. It's more of a, oh wow, here's a brand new challenge I hadn't anticipated by getting more organized and doing all the things you're supposed to do. Yeah. And it's created this sort of slight vacuum between the groups.
And I wonder I was thinking, like, when we used to do, again, going back to our agency days, I used to write a lot of the website, and the reason I like doing it is because I could do it in a tone of voice that was right for us, and it kind of flowed and everything. And I keep thinking I really want to do something like that again for ScreenCloud, but I just never have the time because.
But is it you that should do that now?
But no, exactly. I shouldn't do that because why should I be writing copy, kind of thing? But I just think, well, if I'm like that, probably everyone's like that. It's not like we're the only people busy in the company is the founders. So.
Ironically, I thought you were going to say something else there when you talked about the agency, because there was this big missing thing. Because back in the agency, there were loads of, it was all sort of towards in one room, but there were loads of different departments and different things that needed to be pulled together to get a project from, here's an RFP to go live. Like, a lot of things have to happen, and a lot of different people are involved to a certain greater or lesser extent. Including getting the thing paid for and billed and stuff like that. Shipped, billed, done, signed off, et cetera, and then what you do next. There's a lot of moving parts, but there's one deeply consistent part: the client, right? So when you're doing agency or that project work, like, the client maybe not literally be one person, but it would be a small handful of very engaged external people who were massively motivated as well by this turning out correctly on time to the really high standard and all of this. Yeah. And I think that was the thread, most of it, or at least even if it wasn't them phoning up going, why isn't that different? Like, it would be the thing that if we don't move this along, the client will be disappointed and stuff like that.
Or we won't get paid
But we don't have the client. We have this amorphous mass of clients, none of whom, not even the biggest one, can influence it to that degree. And isn't has any idea of what's going on most of the time because they didn't sponsor the new feature or whatever. They may have requested it in the past, but a lot of what we do has not been requested as such. It's just improvements on what we're doing. And I feel that that's the bit that's why am I racking my brains for an answer to this question, is because in the past, well, one, we were smaller, so it was easier, but I think also that client impact was huge. I certainly felt it. I felt the presence of the client throughout everything I did.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about when you were asked for a proposal, there was normally a deadline.
Yep.
There was normally a budget. So you had to work within that. You couldn't go, well, that's not where we're at this point. We're not at the proposal writing process in our agency right now. We'll talk to you again in 2 months' time. So yeah, I don't know how you would replace that. Really, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it?
Which made me think it's us. Like, we're the driving force. Who's the driving force of energy, in terms of like saying things have to be done at a certain point, or pushing forward, driving forward. To a degree, I suppose you're investors, but if they're like ours, they're not like on our case people.
So yeah, maybe the founders have to be. Maybe they're not the whole client. Maybe they're different parts of the client. So. Someone could be, I'm the onboarding bit of the client. I'm going to pretend to be. I'm going to be the voice of the person that comes to the company, or has a first touch point with the company, and then starts using the product. I don't know. Yeah,
but I've always thought that about the companies. Admittedly, usually with way more funding and way bigger than us. But when I have gone through an onboarding process, sort of say using them as a software service or something like that, I have always found like just how elegant every touch point and joined up the whole experience has been, from sort of one end to the other. Like the ones that get it right, it feels like smooth like butter.
Yeah.
And then the ones where it's janky, it's painful. Where where one team doesn't seem to have a clue what's going on with the other, and it feels super janky.
And it gets bigger. You think about very big companies. Like I've got, say Vodafone. I'm working.
Well, they're very janky, I'd imagine.
Terrible. Like you just talk to different people, and they just tell you completely different things. And
which maybe this is good news for us, because at least they're huge. I mean, not that I would ever want to be the people behind a company known for like that.
I had this kind of strange thing. Like one day, someone's going to read this conversation that I'm having with this kind of random sales person or customer support person, and they're going to be horrified. But of course they
probably won't.
Yeah, there's no kind of algorithm that's kind of going, "Ooh, look, this is flagged something that we hadn't realized before."
Yeah, red alert. Our systems aren't all joined up.
Yeah,
I mean, exactly.
But we should aspire to. That's something we should aspire to, as you say, to have that kind of almost like that. I always kind of think when you get a new Mac, and you open it up, and everything just kind of, you enter a few things, and then it just kind of figures out all your kind of passwords and all the sites you've seen before, and all your kind of social media stuff and all your contacts and everything. And you're just like, it just works.
There's a product manager at Apple going, yeah, that was about $200 million to make that process work.
Yeah.
Well.
but it's reward. It's not only does it work, but it looks beautiful, and just ping. Oh man. Maybe
it's just incredibly bloody hard. And if you've got some of the world's greatest talent and lots of money, you can join up. But it certainly shouldn't be that you therefore drop the aspiration. But I really feel I'm missing something obvious, but I haven't really ever heard anyone talk about this before. What they normally talk about is this need to get yourself organized and get this hierarchy in and define all of these roles. And what I realized is
make yourself redundant. That's the whole thing.
Make yourself redundant.
Keep replacing yourself. Keep replacing yourself.
Yeah, but then it's sort of, you've built a wall, but you haven't put the grouting in. Where's the grouting? What's that bit?
Or where's the interconnecting doors?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you kind of done it and then realize, there isn't an easy way to get out of this room. So I don't know. Right? I suppose this podcast is supposed to give. Is it supposed to give advice? I don't know. Does it?
This one certainly doesn't. Help us.
Help. Yeah. What do you think? I don't know. It's weird.
Maybe we'll look back on it and go, "Oh, dude."
I'm sure there's something. I feel like I've got a huge blind spot, and I just haven't been able to figure it out.
It might be these. I mean, I'm not saying that we probably want to do this necessarily, but these might be these kind of cross-functional teams. These like little skunk work teams that. Yeah,
but it's almost just as you've given them structure, you rip it away again.
Yeah, another week, another organisational restructure.
Yeah. It's odd. I don't know. But I can see loads and loads of different areas of effort not likely to fulfil its true potential, and not because of the people that that built or worked or wrote or created or designed or interacted, whatever it might be. And that's a shame. That's a crying shame. Because you know what will also then happen was, let's say it's a V1, and one of them has gone out today. It's called Engage. Instagram Stories for Screens. You should try it out. Engage on your iOS and Google App Stores. It's a V1. Like, there's clear flaws in the not flaws. Let's say there's clear features missing, inevitably, but the actual smoothness of it is not bad. If that doesn't get out and get into the hands of those early customers and collects proper feedback and actually gets explained a little bit, because it will need a bit of explanation due to slight lack of onboarding features, etc. If what comes back is no one used it, in the next product cycle, let's say a product cycle from now, when it pops up again, people are like, nah, it didn't really take fire, that one. And it will die. But I know, because it's my idea. No, I know because I just genuinely know. If there was one thing I was going to pin my hat on, as there's several features inside of ScreenCloud that I promise are like the game changers. I just know they are. That, I believe, is one of them. Done well, marketed, pushed, and iterated on well, it's 100% the right thing. I know it will die if it doesn't survive its first kind of contact with Earth, which is today. And it petrifies me.
If it's like, so again, so I'm thinking about, again, my past lives I used to work at The Economist, and when we launched a new magazine, it would have a publisher, and the publisher would be the person who pulled everything together and made everything happen. I wonder if it is just a project manager or a product manager or a publisher or a director, or I don't know, a producer or something that
is
says...
Is it a single person? Is it? But then does that not somewhat divorce yourself from responsibility even further?
Yeah, possibly. If someone's going, well, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're just in this you're a cog in a large thing, and is that where the magic happens? Are you going to get that feedback? Now they've picked it up and gone with it. Are they going to even interpret it right?
Yeah. Although, having said that, again, like at The Economist, like we'd launch a new magazine, and you would be part of that. So I was in the marketing department, but I was part of the new magazine's team. So I would be like the only person in the marketing department responsible for marketing that particular. And I'd have a boss and everything who would oversee me, but. I would be the person doing the execution of the marketing for that particular new publication. So I can sort of see it if you said, right, okay.
But so that's fine if it's a feature, you know what I mean? But like, what about something completely different? What about one of Tony's videos?
Yeah.
It goes out on a marketing channel, but
then
actually,
how does sales see it?
Yeah, exactly. What if actually the best audience for it were using it in sales demos or something like that? That's where it would really light fire or something. Are they going to be able to get it in there? Are they going to get them to pick it up? I mean, sure, they'll put it on a Slack channel and watch it, but what if the salespeople don't watch it, or it skips by, or they see it but they don't really get how useful that could be? Then that asset doesn't sweat anywhere near as hard as it could have, just by pushing out on the channels that they've got more control of. So I don't, and I think there's insights that we get in support and sales. Like, how do they sort of reach back to the product team, but normally only on when bad things are bad, or what about the more subtle stuff, like that? Yeah,
maybe this is something we need to come back to.
Something we need to solve and then tell you how to solve
how we did it.
Yeah,
and maybe ask some people as well who've done this before.
I'm all ears.
Yeah,
genuinely. Is that us wrapping up?
I think we've probably done like the sort of 35 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds good enough, especially as we've given you zero insight on what to do.
You can empathise with our pain, with our struggles.
Yeah, is that what great podcast material is all about?
I don't know. I want to feel like you're listening to someone with a
real life being played out in real time. It's a sort of Big Brother of podcasts.
Yeah. Well, people with your kind of soulmates online. We're kind of got similar struggles. I'm sure we're not the only people in the world who are sort of wrestling with these things.
Yeah. One day I'll look back on this and laugh.
Yeah. You never know.
Until next week, 2 weeks. When do we publish these things again?
Yeah, until the next fortnight.
Bye.
Ciao.